Hello, everyone. I'm Traci Arieli, end-of-life doula and founder of Comforting Closure. Welcome to another episode. For most of human history, we had a physical place to return to after someone died. A headstone, a family plot, a monument, a space where you could stand, reflect, tell them what has happened since they've been gone, and feel connection to the generations before you. It was not just about remembering, it was about remaining in relationship. Today, most of our lives lives inside of our phone. Photos, text messages, emails, social media posts, thousands of moments are stored in the cloud. When someone dies, those memories do not sit in a cemetery, they sit on servers. So, what does that legacy look like now? Have we replaced sacred space with digital feeds? Have we confused being seen with being remembered? And as technology becomes more powerful, especially with AI, what responsibility do we carry in how we preserve a life? Today, I'm joined by Alex Josephson, architect and CEO of Cumulus, a digital legacy platform designed to hold and honor memories. We'll discuss how design shapes remembrance, where AI fits into legacy, and whether digital space can offer something grounding in a world where families no longer gather at grave sites. So grab a warm drink, find a comfortable seat, and join us for the conversation. Alex, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Wow, Traci, thank you for inviting me. And you're hired. You describe the work better than I do, I think.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, I want to start with you. Can you tell us about your journey to Cumulus and really what was happening in your life that made this work feel necessary?
It's a good question, especially for someone hailing from San Jose. Um, like where everybody and anyone and everybody is a tech founder in San Jose, right? Or is a tech
Yeah,
adjacent
yeah, that's becoming
job.
more and more the case,
Yeah,
especially with AI.
yeah. Yeah, I stumble and fell into this, and very innocently. And my background is in design. My background is in architecture. Uh, Studied architecture for more than a decade. Had to drop out of my would have been my fourth degree in architecture in England. And I started an architecture firm called Partisans, a firm that is not named upon. It's not an acronym of its partners. It represents a mission, a cause, and I think we're trying to make the world a better place, but also represent a fight for better values and better experiences. And the question is, you know, making a short story long, is how does an architect and a designer find themselves in the middle of this heck morass? and It makes a lot of sense actually, because on the one hand, you have this issue of designing memorials. The pyramids. The first idea of an architect is this person Imhotep. Whether he or she or they existed, they designed the pyramids. And the question is like, well, what were architects' raison d'être? Is it building the primitive house, or was it building monuments? Probably monuments, my guess. And then on the other hand, the whole world is changing. It's going digital, and in a very amazing, beautiful dinner with an investor in real estate in Toronto in 2020. He said, "Alex, you're a brilliant architect. You guys win awards all over the world, but forget bricks. What about bytes? Like, how are you bringing your talent and your skill to the digital world? Because we're gonna be bionic." And I was like, it's like, okay. So park that over here. And then my father had been fighting cancer for 10 years, went on chemo, and during the pandemic, asked me to design his memorial. And he actually wanted a family tomb. And who else would you go to but your son, the architect, to design your family tomb? My uncle would send these absurd emails. Save this for the family archive. This obscure Ohio State optometry school best alumni of the last 75 years. Like, I love these people, my father and my uncle, but like, why a person employing 30 architects has the time to make the family album of all the people in the family? So I would get these emails about, well, you got to preserve this, you got to design a monument. So that, and then the act of designing my father's or my family's memorial was so unsatisfying. It was like, what does a piece of stone say about a human being except for the basic information about their life when they were born? Maybe if it's an aesthetically interesting wave, it's like, oh, this person must have been kind of interesting. Doesn't tell them about their lemon custard pie recipe or the fact that they had two PhDs, and you know, it doesn't say anything about your life or your love or the fact you're obsessed with Egyptology. Nothing, right? So there was all these things happening, and then I happened to marry a venture capitalist, and I was designing my family's memorial, and I had sort of said, you know what, I'm going to build a digital cloud experience, immersive experience around all of our memories, video, imagery, sound. I kind of left the physical memorial uh, concept that my father wanted from me in the dust, and then my wife and then other people were like, well, this thing you're designing is so beautiful. Why would anybody want this? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, they were like, so right, make me a deck. I'm like, what's a deck?
That's
Call this a
great.
presentation in architecture, right? Or a prezi. We don't call it a deck, or a
Welcome to the
pitch.
shift to the technology world.
Anyway, so like, people don't just. I didn't go to Stanford to take over the desk service and memorialization space. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
I studied architecture. It's funny. I went to Waterloo, which in Canada is sort of Stanford or MIT of the country. It's where BlackBerry and JavaScript and a lot of other things were invented. So I was always tech adjacent, and technology had always been at the core of our architecture studios work. But it was all the pressures. It was like we were, a diamond had to result of all these pressures coming on me, and that's how Cumulus was born. It wasn't like some kind of an epiphany. I, I want to build a poetic digital equivalent to a cemetery. It was really a lot of things that pointed me in this direction, but I did make a deck, and I did come up with a fun name, Cumulus, which is like a cloud, and everybody wants to go to the heavens and go to the clouds, so I called it Cumulus. And uh, and I actually convinced six venture capitalists, one being Alicorp in New York, which is one of the largest privately run venture capital firms in New York, Kevin Ryan, and they invested and led my pre-seed round. And Park Lawn, which was a publicly traded death services company, which owns about 300 cemeteries and funeral homes around North America, also invested. And then a series of angel investors also invested. And my partisans also invested sweat equity into the concept. And learning to become a tech founder, having learned how to, laying bricks is easier than building bytes.
It, it's interesting. Thank you. To learn about how Cumulus came to be, and how, like most of us, it stemmed from something happening in our families. Um, when you were talking, uh, a thought came to me, because I talk to a lot of people, and in the work I do also with my actual clients, memorialization comes up a lot. And you have the physical memorialization, right? And in a lot of cultures, that serves not only as a place where you can go and talk with your loved ones, which that's becoming less and less now, especially with younger generations. I include myself in that younger generation, by the way. But also, for families to come to, on holidays, sometimes they go, and of course on the anniversary of a person's death. Um, but today, most of our lives exist on our phones, our photos and our texts and our social media. How does that change how we define how we come together and how we define legacy? What are your thoughts on that?
So
That's a big
for
question.
me,
Sorry. I know it's not like
it's
we're
it,
these
it's a, it,
gurus, right?
it's a lot,
Gurus,
but
right?
it goes back to the basic thing, which is like, um, what's a poetic solemn experience to to pay reverence or pay respects to who brought you into the world. For me, what got me through my impending grief was building Cumulus at my father's hospital bed in an ICU while he was intubated and fighting COVID, fighting cancer, and he's alive. It's amazing. But I think that coming through all of that, building this memorial for him by his bedside, but for our family as well, my uncle, my crazy uncle, my wife, my daughters, it helped me get through that year because it was a year of being in a hospital. And I think that death is not just about what happens after. There's so many stages that you go through before you're dealing with memorialization and dealing with what's on your phone. What do you do while you're alive? How do you can't it be a little bit less traumatic by building a little bit every day and doing it by network effect? You can invite people to help you. So I think, like, your question, if I go back to it, first of all, I think that memorializing someone is cathartic. It feels good. Whether you're going through the grief already or you're being proactive, it's an extremely satisfying experience. You're like, oh, I got it done. Like, I know I can go to my phone and I can bring up uh I can bring up my daughter Allegra's time capsule, and I've got little notes to her there and videos and images of her and me and my wife just for her. And if something were to happen, it's there. And like, that's so satisfying. And I think that the problem with what you're talking about is different cultures do things differently. I think North America, we're very avoidant. We don't, it's like even venture capitalists, they invest in death, even though it's the most certain thing, the most certain market. You know, You're like, but if you go to Asia, Confucian cultures, they build a shrine every year to their ancestors. Jews, they light a Yorkshire candle every year to their ancestors. Um, Many cultures, I think the nihilism of North American culture, the sort of like the, this idea that we're really going to live forever, it's such a lie. And the inevitability of death and mortality is something that it's it's better to embrace its reality and manage it versus pretending it's not there. But I think that we're very unique globally, and I think that comes from the British as well. The British, like, uh, they make fun of each other remorselessly, with no emotions, right? That's their whole brand, right? So stiff upper lip, and that's part of both the United States and Canada's hangover culturally, which is like we deny this part of living, which is dying, and we leave it all to the end, and it's extraordinarily painful and expensive and difficult when you leave everything to the next of kin, and that's one person usually, and it's usually a wife or a son, or it's usually a wife or a daughter. Statistically, actually, it's
Yes.
women picking up the pieces, and okay, and I bucked that trend. But I really think this, it's like you got to break this off into bites. It's like, well, what's going on here? Other cultures do this physically and spiritually. We don't. The Mexicans have the Day of the Dead. I mean, like we are we're in our we're in our own bubble. So I think our conversation is sort of, we have to situate it globally, where it's like this is a very uneasy subject and people don't do it, right? But there really is a problem, which is that you're right. Our lives are no longer these beautiful notes to our kids in case the plane crashes on the way to our vacation to Paris. It's everything is in your phone. Do you know what I mean? Like, Like everything is in your phone. And the tech companies want it that way. They
Yes.
don't want you to touch a piece of paper. They don't want you to use a laptop anymore. They want you to use a phone. And they want you to use a phone so they can capitalize on your personal information because your phone is unlike your laptop. Everything is public to them.
Yep.
And so your most precious things, they build up and it's completely overwhelming at a certain point. You got 50,000 images, 500 videos, God knows how many notes. Maybe you write your dreams in your phone. Maybe you have voice notes. Maybe you have and it's, God forbid something happens and it's all in there and no one has any access to it. But God forbid they have access to it and see things you never wanted them to see.
So,
So how do you manage your legacy in that context?
yes, yes. And it's really interesting. Well, before I go on, I have like, I, questions keep coming in my mind. You mentioned that note. This is a personal question, so you don't have to answer it. But that note of your family writing a note, your parents writing a note when they go off on a trip. Did your parents actually do that? I'm asking
My
because
mom, my mom, so my mom did that. My
yes,
mom read me a note because it was the 80s.
yes,
I'm probably older than you. I'm probably older than you.
no,
In
no.
the
I think we're
80s,
around the same age. I'm in my 50s, early
it
50s.
okay, well, you look great. Uh,
Thank you.
so Oren's a lucky guy. So what I would say is in the 70s and 80s, you had a better than getting struck by lightning chance of dying in a plane crash. Like
Yes,
planes crashed in the 70s and 80s. So your parents, if they went on a trip together, they either had to take separate flights for precaution,
right.
or they wrote a note.
Yeah, my
That was
parents sat
and
us
I have
down,
these
wrote a
I
note,
have these notes.
and went even further. They're like, "This is our bank that we go to. You must
Yes,
talk to this person. Here are our accounts number. Tracy, I'm teaching you how to sign your mom's name." Like, what was I going to do? Going to the bank and forge my mom's name? It was like really cute.
that's pretty funny,
It
but that's
is really
beautiful. That's a beautiful story. And but the question is also going back to people like us. There's so much physical stuff.
yes,
My grandmother put together an album, and this all gets to Cumulus, and I'll tell you why. My grandmother put together an album. My grandmother was an incredibly successful businesswoman in her own right, and in the 80s, she put together this album. How she had the time to do it, given all the things she was doing. But it's always these like super high achievers that are the archivists of each family. It's never the laggard. So I said, we have this album, and I could show it to you if you want to see it. It's on my Cumulus account. But I was like, this thing's gonna die. It's gonna end up in somebody's cabinet in their basement. There's gonna be a flood. It's all gonna get ruined. So I was like, so you could digitize things, right? So you digitize the physical, all these notes, all these albums, but where do you put them? On a Google Drive? You're gonna trust Google? You want to put it in a Google Drive. That's where your legacy is going to be left to be managed. They don't care about your legacy. They care about the content in that they can mine for information about you and sell it back to the world. Um, so like basically there's this trend to digitize our physical legacies, but where do you put it all? Meta?
yeah.
Google?
And that's a really interesting point because I think people are confusing visibility, especially because our phones, Facebook, TikTok makes visibility really easy, right? I think people are confusing visibility with remembrance and legacy, and they're completely different.
No, legacy is immersive and poetic, and that segues into design. Your point about that is like you can't scroll a legacy. You can't scroll a legacy. What you can do is immerse yourself. You go to the church, to the niche, where what I love about Cumulus is I democratized the architectural experience, the immersive experience that only the wealthy can afford to design for anybody. Because what did the wealthiest people 500 years ago do? They had a niche in a church. where their family was preserved and their memory with certain relics forever, right? It was an architectural physical experience. What Cumulus does is take all of your memories and create a physical immersive cloud for those to be experienced online that you can visit. And it's supposed to be touching. It's supposed to be spiritual. It's supposed to be poetic. It's supposed to be beautiful. And it also has customizable qualities to it. And there's a way to build on network effects that other technology companies obviously sell to the world on social networks, but do that in a way that's private, dignified. If you want it to be public, it's controllable as well. And it's not a free for all of negativity and hate and advertising and sales. Our model is that Cumulus wants to be the first forever company. We want to donate to a trust that we want to build, a financial trust like Cemetery builds, so that whatever happens to me or the people who are working for Cumulus, there's enough money to justify the maintenance of the platform, just like a trust for a cemetery would. But the idea is to create a framework for all these multimedia files and their myriad different formats that you could put a VR headset on if you're into VR and be like, wow. Like I was in a cemetery looking at my family cloud with a VR headset, and the groundskeeper came over and was like, "What are you doing?" He was like, "What are you doing here with your camera and your headset?" And I was like, "Hey, you want to see my family cloud? This is my grandmother's grave." And he put it on, and he was like, "This is amazing." He was like, "You did this?" I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." And he was like, "This is amazing." And this was like a guy who was in shorts on driving a tractor, all suspicious about what I was doing in the cemetery. What I was doing is putting the cumulus marker for my grandmother's grave on her tombstone and initiating that for the first time. And he was sort of like catching me red-handed. But you're allowed to leave you're allowed to leave a memento on a grave. It just happened to be a digital marker that the whole world could tap or look at with their phone and see my grandmother's achievements. Otherwise, all that grave says is Merrill Josephson. That's all it says. When she was born, when she died. It doesn't say anything about her achievements as a woman in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s in Toronto. It doesn't say anything about it. It doesn't say anything about her Coca-Cola brisket. It doesn't say anything about her love of art and and life and travel and working and hustling her butt off and providing for her family. Like, it doesn't say anything about that. But I did her justice, and I built something that I'm really proud of for her, and my dad inspired me, and all these other people inspired me to do this. But it wasn't that I went to business school and needed to figure out a way to become a billionaire or something like this.
I, it's so interesting. I just what you said, so, to make it clear, we're not talking about replacing those memorials, those grave sites.
No,
We're talking about people being able to know the person who is in that grave site. And a lot of that is, and it's not about the data either that you're getting. It is about honoring their life. And so
it's totally about honoring.
you have design, and you've been very thoughtful with design, but this entire Cumulus is the it's all about thought. You've done this so thoughtfully. And so it's more than just the design. It's just more than that.
Well,
Like,
thank you. That's a huge compliment. So there is something though. There cemeteries and funeral homes, they are so overwhelmed with the physical realities of dealing with bodies, last minute care, at need arrangements, grief. Technology is affecting their bottom lines because people can't afford to do these things anymore. You're in Asian nations, mostly in the 99 percentile, are cremated because the cost of being in cemeteries and land scarce environments, cemetery scarce environments, is extraordinary. And you're starting to see it creep up in North America too. So in fact, physical is becoming more and more scarce and only limited to the wealthy. So the question is, Do only wealthy people care about their legacy? I don't think so. And in fact, I think that being able to, even if you were forced to cremate someone, buying a Cumulus account is it's pennies on the dollar compared to a physical grave. So I think for the wave of cremations and the growth in alternative solutions and arrangements for people, which is going to get into the 80s and 90s before you know it, by 2035, um, you're going to need to find a way to memorialize people. Otherwise, their memories are going to disappear onto a mantle or who knows where. And the question is, how do you? I actually want to. Can I actually share something with you? Can I show you something? If I go to Cumulus, this is what it looks like, right? It's sort of like some people accuse me of having made the Minority Report of memories. If you've seen
Okay,
that
there
Tom
there
Cruise movie.
is. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So, so the idea is you're immersed. But to your point about the physical, to the point about the physical, what do you do if someone passes away and it's really about ashes? And what if there's a huge family? And what if there's many places? This is a man who died last year who has 32 grandchildren and 8 great grandchildren. He had he
And
had
so
6 boys.
for those who are listening, because majority of my the people
Yeah.
that listen to this are like on Apple, who aren't able to see this. What Alex is showing us is actually a person's, I'm not going to say account, but their memorial, their online memorial, their
This is
Cumulus.
their memorial space, their
Yeah,
cloud.
and
Yeah.
and it's very beautifully done. Um, Very interactive, very interactive. And I could see when you talk about using the immersive glasses, how well this would play into that.
It works. It feels interesting even when you're just trivially using it on your phone because the phone is really just sort of it's not an immersive experience, but it is an easy way to portal the information that's important off of it into a place that you can trust. But to the point about this is you see all the different kinds of information here. Let's go to the map. This man's ashes are 8,000 miles apart from each other. Are you a golfer? Do you guys golf?
No, no, we do not golf. I'm more of a
So,
cyclist.
so this guy was a golfer, and for all the people who are golfers out there, his sons traveled to this golf course, the oldest golf course in the world. It's called St. Andrews. And if you point on this, it's called the Swilken Bridge, and it says Paul's ashes scattered here by his sons Mark, Peter, and Scott.
Nice.
And the world's going to cremation, it's going to aquamation.
Yep.
You know, wouldn't it be interesting if you know if someone asked to be put into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and you could put a pin exactly where you did that and then share that forever with your family. There's just something, it's like knowing where the ship went down. Like it feels it feels different and it adds a layer to your point about the physical. The physical is one thing. You'll always have the physical arrangements, but everything else that makes it so emotional, um, this is what I'm trying to achieve. We call it the one funeral director at a cemetery called this the missing link in memorialization and death services. And the idea is to uh, you can bring together unlimited collaborators. It creates presentations for you. It marks graves. It marks places where you can scatter ashes, anything. And I think it brings a kind of immersive, physical, dignified experience to what is very flat obituaries.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about saying, well, is an obituary, is that it? And then the worst part about the existing technology and death services is it's essentially a scraping operation by legacy.com and ancestry.com. They're scraping all the obituaries and all the legacy files from all the cemeteries and all the funeral homes, and they're reselling it to people. and they're reselling it to companies, that information, that data. And, like, if you think that when you die, people aren't profiting from your information, it's unbelievable. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be part of that. I want to build something that's different. I want to build something that people can trust. There's no advertising. There's no scraping. You'd have to invent a pretty powerful AI to scrape our site because it would have to be really sophisticated. Um, but also, you can choose whether your account's private and public. So I think it's just a different way of thinking about digital solutions for this.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned, obituary. I posted on one of my doula sites, on with yeah, one of the doula pages on Facebook. I said, "Do you think the obits? Do you think that they're dead?" That because quite honestly, when I'm working with people, less and less of them, I would say only about 40%, maybe 30% really want to do an obit anymore. I mean, and it's so, in fact, they're just using AI to do it right now to write the obit because it is so flat. It is so, it's just about data. It's not about the person anymore. And what came back was, yes, it's still relevant because people need to know that, sometimes that's the only way people know this person passed away. Well, there are not even anymore. If you go on Facebook, people put on Facebook, this person has passed away. So that's not even, I honestly believe, and they're like, that's where records are found. That's where a lot of times, and that's exactly what you're talking about, that these companies are scraping and, to get that information. Um, but obits at this point, they're relevant for the wrong reason. I feel they're
I
not.
think
It's not
obits
about the
ob-
person.
obit
It's not
obit
about honoring them anymore.
obits represent a kind of nostalgia. It's physical. It's very public. Your community sees it, but it's limited to your community, right? Unless you're lucky enough to be successful or prolific enough that the New York Times does an obituary on you. Like, you're talking about local newspaper content, right? But I think there's a kind of nostalgia and a beauty and a solemnity to the obituary section of a newspaper. It demands good grammar. Uh, like, you can't just publish garbage. I think it's interesting how, like, no, you can't just say anything in an obituary on a newspaper, but you can say whatever the hell you want on Facebook. There's just zero, there's zero ethics. How the digital world was able to avoid the ethics of everything else that's broadcast on TV and in newspapers is a joke to me. And I think that's another part about Cumulus, where it's like you can invite infinite numbers of family members and friends to collaborate on your cloud and contribute, but you can assign administrator, contributors, and viewer status to each of these things to control what that content is. It's not a free for all where you can just say whatever you want without an administrator being able to say no, that is not appropriate here, and I'm not even allowing that to be put up because I'm the administrator and I have the right to control this account. So I think that it brings back a sort of quality to the experience and a trustability to the experience. Whereas these other platforms, like, you can say whatever you want about someone with zero. It's unbelievable. You can say anything you want about a person anywhere. Um,
That's really the difference of just being, um, seen or versus really being honored and being remembered versus just being seen, which I think that's what most people want on TikTok and Instagram, and it's interesting. I know that it's not only about remembering, but you were talking about the process before about, hey, I got this done. My daughter, Allegra, I have her. We have her. She's already has her page. She has her site. It's done, and growing. It's continual. I know that when I work with people, and we're doing legacy projects, and we're doing for the person, if the person is still alive, it is very meaningful for them, because it is a bit of life review that goes on, and that's such an important part of aging. And um, and really, when you know you're going to pass away, it is an important step. That is a step that you need to take. But for a person that has passed away, for their family to build something like this, it is it helps with grief so much, because everyone wants to talk about their loved one. So the process of even putting it together helps tremendously with grief. Helps even pre-death if you're working with the person. It helps with anticipatory grief. You've done this work yourself with your father, and that's why you created Cumulus. How did this help with your grief?
So I think that's you hit the nail on the head, and how you have the energy to do what you do day in and day out with people and families is like you're like an angel, because you're doing things and seeing things that frankly most people don't show up for. They kind of avoid it in the end. And God forbid their family members go through the end in a way that's sort of like, because they can't deal with their emotions around it, they don't do these things. And I think sometimes people don't get taken care of properly either. They're sort of put in a home or whatever it is. And um, like I just have a bit of a different. We were very hands on with my dad when he was going through the process of chemo and fighting COVID and being in the hospital and being told that he was going to die twice, and just um, like we were there. I was in the hospital every day where my brother was, and it got very emotional because you're almost competing who's giving more, because these people, our parents, have given us so much. And um, it can fray relationships. Like I know my brother and I had a really hard time, and I think he even was suspicious about what I was doing with Cumulus. He was like, like, but now he gets it. But I think like when someone's dying, your emotions are so you're so out of touch with like controls, and you go places that you don't have any control over going to, and we ended up being able to work it out. But like I think that the act of taking care of someone includes the memory and making sure that they download not just their bank account information or their whatever it is that your mother, you were talking about. Like, yeah, you're going to manage the financial and the legal stuff, because if you don't, it's just a mess.
Yes,
Like it really is just
it
a
is.
mess. A lot of people don't do it properly. But what's worse is like you then didn't take care of any of the soft emotional part. You took care of the financial, but you didn't do any of the memorialization part. And then you've got a funeral to plan, a memorial to plan, a grave to decide on, a tombstone to decide on, or an urn, or a niche, or a columbarium, or like whatever it is. And you're on your heels the whole time. And in the end, your choices weren't very well informed. You didn't contemplate them. You didn't really curate what was, with them, what they wanted to say or leave behind. And with my parents, my father survived, and one of the things I gave to them afterwards was I hired someone to interview them and tell their life stories, and they walked around the house. And there's a lot of companies doing that. Like you can write a book, you can get an interview, you can do an interview online. They can come to your house, like all these memorialization services, right? But where do you put it all? it was like I got my father to do this interview after he survived, and it was really great that he did it, and my mother as well. And it's on my Cumulus cloud forever. So everybody can see it. You can see it. My cloud's public. So you can listen to my father talking about surviving. You can listen to my mom talking about the letter she wrote me when she went on a trip to Barbados or wherever it was. I can't remember. It was like 1984. It was probably wasn't Paris. Like I can't remember where it was, but um, like and those are there forever. I did the work. Is everything there? No, but I know that if they go, when they go, I'm like we are way further ahead. It's going to be such a cool memorial because not only can I say these things because I know their stories, because they said what their stories are to me in very vulnerable emotional states, but also I put this memorial together for them. And my brothers contributed, my wife's contributed, and um, my aunts contributed. Everybody's contributed. My brother, my father's friends have contributed, and I didn't have to do it on my own. I invited them to his cloud, and they contributed. And he's still alive, and it's not morbid. It's actually like, hey, Bobby, I got this great photo of you when you were like 100 pounds heavier. This is one to keep.
I was about to say,
Like,
like, who really owns the narrative? And now I know no one really, everyone owns that narrative, right?
well,
Um,
it allows for the humor and the
yeah,
fun and the anyway.
I,
There's more to it.
and I think that people who are able to do these life reviews before they get sick and before they get to the point where they're dying, um, or even after their family's putting together, um, I think that when people do this beforehand, not only is it something for your family, but something for yourself because that reflection that you have on your life, it changes the way you live.
It might, but also I think when you're sick in bed and you got nothing to do, I haven't been around long enough with the product at the state it's in now, which is like this is now like a really good product. It works perfectly and seamlessly on your phone. This for someone in palliative or someone who's living in a home, like keeping them engaged with their relatives if they're not beside them, or just like something to do that they can feel proud about, but in a place where they don't feel like they have all the dignity that they used to, or the privacy that they used to, or like if they're sitting in a hospice, or if they're,
Yeah.
like I haven't been able to get it into people's hands, but I'd be curious about. I'll probably go to an old age home or something like this and just offer it for free to like 500 people and see what happens. But
I would go even a step further and say that doing this in a residential community, and having people do this, I think it opens up interaction between people. And
yeah,
because with your family, you're saying your family is gets involved, so it helps with interaction with people, and helps it helps just people come together. So, I talked beforehand at the very beginning how families come together at grave sites, the physicality of it, and how do you get
yeah.
that when you have a digital platform? And it does sound like you do. You have a place where families can come together and work together and remember together, even putting it, creating this together, that it is something that families do together, that friends can do together also, and share this with each other.
They can, and I don't think it existed before. I'm pretty sure this is the only thing like this where it's this coherent and there's a digital place and space, but also that all these formats are covered and there's the social quality to it, and it's not about scrolling. And so I think like this idea of interaction, like or going to a cemetery, like by the way, most people don't live anywhere near where their ancestors are buried. And when you show up at a cemetery, especially one that's closed, like not open for more customers, there's no one sitting around waiting to show you where someone's buried unless you go at a certain time. So the issue of digitizing these places and finding your loved ones, or if some like I went and found where all my ancestors were buried in Toronto, and I pinned their graves. But I got to tell you, like, waiting for the 2 hour period where some groundskeeper is at this obscure cemetery that you had to drive an hour to in traffic, that you may not do more than once every 5 years or maybe 10 years, and getting there and knowing where they are. Like, I remember I couldn't find my grandmother's grave. I was like, I got to leave. I don't know where she is. Couldn't reach anybody to tell me where. They were like, it's a, like, I left. And it took me, and like, this is going to be more and more an issue where it's like the inconvenience of visiting someone. The question is, like, can you visit their digital memorial and add a sentiment to keep, and you talk about planting flowers every year. Well, I mean, okay, what about adding a memory every year and enlightening the next generation and ensuring the generation after that shares your values or knew what your struggles were, and how you how you rose above it. Like no cemetery can achieve that, and they're inaccessible more and more and more.
And I think that what this really does is, gives a person a sense of their history also. I wish I had my great grandparents came over, were the people that came over here from Europe.
Where did
I
they come
don't,
from?
they came from Romania. Um,
No way.
and
That's where my family is from.
so
Romania, and Vienna,
yeah,
and
right
Austria.
before World War One, or right at World War One, and so that sense of history, I wish I knew them better. I wish that, because that's part of who I am, and um, I know that many people who are younger might not understand that, but let me tell you, you will understand that as you get older. And it is just, something's lost. A part of you is lost. So, um, and that's not something you get even on Facebook. I know your parents might be on Facebook and Instagram. It's not, you're not going to get that from Facebook and Instagram, because those social media platforms were built, and what people put on them is unrealistic. It's not truth. It's not real. It's they're portraying something that's not real the majority of times. So
Well, they're marketing platforms.
yes,
They're marketing and spectacle platforms. They're not memorialization spaces. They're not built with those intentions. And even more so, to that point about being Romanian, like, or Austrian, and leaving 100, 200 years ago. Imagine leaving places to, like, I mean, what the weather in California is nice. If that's where they went, like, maybe that makes a lot of sense. Like, you go from Romania or Vienna. These are beautiful cities, Bucharest and Vienna,
yes,
like the
very,
seat of civilization 100, 200 years ago, right? So it's like these people left. Maybe they'd left for the good weather and the glory of California, but to come to Toronto, holy cow, you got to really feel like there's an opportunity for you to live a better life, and for your descendants to live a better life, for you to leave Vienna and Bucharest. Like, and how do you, I wish I knew more about those people and their motives, because
yes, yeah. They
I
weren't coming
can't,
for
like,
the weather.
they weren't coming to Toronto for the weather. They were, uh, like,
Yeah, my family's in
they're like,
Chicago. They weren't coming to Chicago for the weather. Let me tell you.
no, exactly. So even to your point, they came to Chicago. So, like, that's a very similar story. It's like, wow, like, whew, talk about leaving the good life, or at least what today, like, when you go to those cities, it's like, oh.
Yeah,
How could you like,
exactly. Compared to Bucharest or Vienna, Chicago was slumming it.
hey, nice city. Not saying Toronto and Chicago aren't great places.
No, no.
Maybe, and like, we don't want to talk politics or anything like that, but like, just very superficially, these are some of the like, just superficially, Vienna and Bucharest are objectively stunning places. These aren't places you leave and with stunning cultures and food and social things to do and like. But I think to that point, either things had to be just terrible for them, or they saw something terrible coming, or they wanted to leave something better for us.
Yeah,
And I think it was about you and I think
yeah,
and it's like, and I was like, wow, just getting into it about the family and like,
yeah.
anyway, I think
But
it's
isn't that also wouldn't you want to know that? And I think that being able to have something like Cumulus where you can tell your story and relay those messages, I think that's really part of that history. That
you could
that
you could ensure that 200, 300, 400 years ahead, they'll have this recording of what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Now,
That's the entire idea of the platform.
what surprised you most?
It's crazy. It's
No, it's
crazy,
not
this
crazy.
idea of a forever company, but that's the idea.
Yeah. Well, being a forever company, I know that you talked about digital granite before when we spoke. Before you mentioned digital granite, and that kind of really stuck to me because most technology companies aren't thinking that way. Yeah, they don't look.
No, they want,
Let me
in fact,
tell
they
you.
want obsolescence.
Yeah,
They
they
want,
don't even look
they
at
want,
they don't look a year ahead. A lot of them.
no, no, they do. They look, how will the upgrade allow them to charge them more? How
Yeah.
will the upgrade and change in technology allow for a new gated cost revenue
Yep.
stream? How they look at obsolescence of hardware and software as a future revenue uh,
Yeah.
indicator to get to, I get it. Like, they want to make money. We live in a capitalist society, but I think like when it comes to memorialization, yes, it costs some money to either have a subscription and earn into perpetuity on Cumulus, or it costs you a few $100 for a perpetual account. But in the context of paying forever, like, that's a totally different proposition from a business perspective.
I'm curious. I'm going to shift a little bit. I'm really curious the process with your family and going through this and making the pages, making the sites for many of your family members, not just your father. What did anything surprise you going through that? Not only with your own process and going through this, but the family and uh, how your family worked together to create these.
What surprised me the most is, really how hard it is to separate people as individuals or couples. We are a part of these just incredible continuums. And this idea of it just being two people when it comes to now memories and these collective experiences, it's like, or almost, it kind of dawned on me. It's like we're all one. You could almost imagine that everybody's connected through these memories and these experiences and these photographs and these videos. But it was like, I've got the Josephson family, then there's the Finstons, there's the Lewises, and it's like, like, shouldn't it just be one family? And then it's like, well, what about their families and theirs? Aren't we? I was like, it's almost overwhelming because it's like, oh, you realize we're so connected versus what we aren't. And then in the process of getting information, what I didn't realize was how precarious the physical things were in terms of their level of deterioration. And that I think that would most likely, if not be the last generation to have these photographs and these letters and these archive these, or the second last, because surely some of this was either breaking down so much physically, or like some of these albums were water damaged already. Like digitizing stuff is one problem. The amount of money that you have to spend to digitize stuff, it's actually extraordinary. Then of course they send you a USB stick or a WeTransfer, and you're like, what? What now? What do I do? So what struck me was just the amount of stuff we have, the amount of stuff I was given by my family and friends, and then how to choose. And I needed their help. And the advantage of being able to send out 80 emails and say, "Hey guys, I need a picture of you for my dad." It's just
Mm.
it's so much easier when you can get the network effects of building the archive. But I think that the biggest realization was not just like the vastness of how big we are as a family, people everywhere. We are connected, truly connected, but also the difficulty of then making choices as to what is in this box versus that box, or this cloud versus that cloud,
Yep.
and 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 then which pictures, which videos, or which writings you want to keep or not keep. And it's almost like you just want to build a giant global cloud where you can just be connected to everybody and feel each other's humanity. But that's not how it works. We are families that, we have this like 80-year kind of window.
Yep. Yeah.
A couple of a few generations know each other, but when
If
you
you're
get into
lucky.
the greats and the great greats, there's just no
Yeah.
the 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 the, the thread starts to sort of lose its coherence, right?
Yeah.
But I think like um I what I know is that it will never be complete. The idea is not complete or completion or finishing anything. It's that it exists. I don't I don't need to access it every if I don't need to or want to. Others may or may not. But when I feel inspired, I can some things. I can write some notes. I can, it doesn't have to be this giant mountain I have to climb at once. It's little moments that I can feel inspired to preserve something or whatever it is, and I don't have to, like, yeah, that's what it's like for me.
Yeah. It's a preservation. It really is. And I love how you bring up into, I love how you bring up the preservation of things and how some of these pictures and how you could see that would only be a generation and that's it. And then these artifacts would be gone. Um,
I'm
so la-
photographing this. I'm gonna keep this one.
Yeah. And it's really funny because I know you could relate to this. My parents have over 50 of these huge albums that they've kept from when we were kids. And some of
That's a
these
lot.
pictures, like out of focus, because back then you didn't have digital photos. You couldn't take 500 photos. You took 100 photos and kept them all, or 30, 50 photos and
You
kept
go
them
through the
all.
album,
Yeah.
you go through the album and you realize how much of it's junk,
Yeah. Sorry,
really.
Dad. Don't mean to
And
say that.
no, seriously, I've got these albums. They're right behind me in the library in our studio here. I actually got some albums, and I took them to the scanner, and it was like 1 in 3 photographs, 1 in 6 photographs, 1 in 4 photographs. It's like you turn the page, and it's like you realize which ones are worth your time and effort very quickly, and you spend 20 minutes doing it, and it's done. Or you can just do it en masse. But the problem with doing it en masse is just you've got so much to go through. Whereas if you just do it, it's not a lot of effort. You'd be surprised how quickly you could get through 50 albums if you sat beside like a, you have one of those like photocopy slash,
Scanner. Yeah.
large scale printers or scanners. If you just sit there beside a scanner and scan, 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 you can like basically, you do it for an hour, you're through an album.
So, well, Alex, I really want to thank you for being on today. It's been a great conversation and I love the platform. So just Thank you very much. If people want to know more about you or find out more about Cumulus, where should they go?
Cumulus.world, or search Cumulus memorialization. Cumulus is online at Cumulus.world. It's on LinkedIn. It's on Instagram. If you want to learn more about me, it's Alex Josephson, architect, founder of Cumulus and Partisans. And we're all over the place. And Cumulus has been in the media in Fast Company as well as the Globe and Mail and other sort of, I would say, more memorialization style publications as well. But you can find it pretty easily. And you can sign up for free for Cumulus. There's limitations, obviously, with a free account, but everybody can have a free account and try it. And you can invite family to try it with you. And if you like it, you can subscribe either as a perpetual account one off, or you can have a subscription where you earn into perpetuity over a series of years and then you stop paying.
Wonderful. Thank you again. I really appreciate it. Listeners, legacy is no longer carved in stone. It lives in our photos, our emails, our stories, and the way we choose to preserve them. Technology is not going away. The question is whether we use it passively or intentionally, whether we allow our memories to scatter across platforms or whether we gather them with care. You do not have to wait until the end of your life to think about legacy. You can begin now by asking what you want remembered, what you want preserved, and how you want future generations to know you. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please comment below or reach out to me directly. And if you found this conversation to be helpful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Traci Arieli from Comforting Closure, wishing you peace and comfort in your journey. Until next time, take care.